Double checking it's recording. I'm always a little bit paranoid. Now it says it has started, so hopefully, fingers crossed. So welcome everybody, and thank you for your time, obviously, as well to listen to essay planning and writing. And as you mentioned, this is something that is quite important to you, obviously, now that you are going to hand in your first essays and assignments, I think. So the deadline is mid-December or early December, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
It's the second week of December.
Okay. So have you started writing something up already, or are you just thinking, okay, I'll wait for this session and then see how I do it?
I'm waiting to see how this goes.
Okay. Right, so let me just introduce you to something that you might have not come across yet, and you don't need to read it, and I'll make the slides available later on as well, and the information is already on SariLearn in the community space under essay planning and writing. But some of you were asking what is actually expected at master level. And so I thought I'll share with you what the descriptor is in terms of what we expect students to demonstrate, okay, throughout the qualification, and what we think that you will then hold after the qualification. Yeah, and obviously these expectations are aligned, or should be aligned, with the assessment criteria for each of the assignments that you have. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So obviously there is a sort of an expectation that you can demonstrate a systematic understanding of knowledge and a specific level of critical awareness in terms of current problems. But there is also an expectation that you can articulate that in a certain way, and this is what we're going to talk through today. Yeah. So this articulation means that you can interpret the knowledge in a discipline, and that you can evaluate critically research and data. Okay, that you can also use and evaluate different methodologies and how you arrive there, and that you can propose hypotheses, for instance, or that you give recommendations and also identify limitations of the work that you're doing. Yeah. So that's what's sort of expected in a nutshell. So, as I said, this should be then part of your assignment, and specifically the assessment criteria that are outlined with each assessment. And if they're not, then you need to really push on that from the module leaders, because that's incredibly important. Without assessment criteria, you would really struggle to know where you're going. Yeah. Have you looked at the assessment brief so far? Have you seen them? Have you received them?
Do you mean the thing which says like 35% for critical thinking, 35% for awareness, all of that one?
Yes, for instance. But so it needs to be split out for each assignment differently. So it's not. Is that for one assignment, or is that overall for the module?
No, it's for all the assignments, and there are 3 categories for each assignment. So we are scored on, on our research, on our analysis, etc.
1 hour research?
No, sorry, we are being scored on the quality of our research.
Okay.
Okay. And then other categories.
Yes. Okay. So these are the criteria that you need to sort of keep in mind, obviously, and that we will work towards today. Yeah. But it's important that they're clear to you. So if they are not clear to you, then you need to go back to the module leader and ask to clarify them or to specify them further. Yeah. So this is just to sort of share with you what we expect at that sort of level. Now, I use something which is sort of a grid, if you want, that can help you to plan your essay, but also to structure it and then to write it. So there's a number of different stages, and we will go through each of them now, yeah? So you can see on the left side, I've got the assessment criteria, which is what I've just talked about. So it's important that you establish that first and that you know that, what they are, that you're familiar with them and that you have a clear and good understanding of what it is that you're supposed to do actually, yeah? And really push on that, because that's something that, you know, we think, oh, it's normal anyway, and, you know, we know what we want from you, but sometimes that doesn't come across as such, yeah? Okay, so each of those stages inform each other. So when you know the assessment criteria and you really know what you're supposed to do, you can then think about the planning stage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Great. Once you've planned it, then you start structuring. And once you've structured it, then you can think about the writing. Okay? So quite often we see people sitting in front of the blank screen and go, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write. But without those 3 stages beforehand, it's very difficult to write something. So I will now talk you through the different stages and what I think is required in them, and how we normally try to ensure that people arrive at the stage where they can actually submit. If you have any questions in between, please ask. We've got another person trying to join us at the moment, but he seems to have issues connecting, so I'm just gonna write to him back and ask him what it says. Okay, so taking these different stages, we now look at the one on the left with the assessment criteria. So obviously you can use this this table if you want as well, and I can send you a table so you can put that in. But there's normally around 3 to 4 assessment criteria that really outline what they're expecting. Normally they're relating to presentation, language, structure, and content, okay, roughly speaking. Now, the next one, as I said, is the plan it stage. So once you have determined your assessment criteria and you're really clear about what you're doing, you need to specify the topic and the aim of your assignment. So either of your essay or report. Here, it's important that you are very clear about what it is. So it could be that the module leader has given a question that you have to explore, or given you a very broad topic that you need to focus on and narrow down. Yeah. So that the more specific you can be from the very beginning on, the easier it will be for you then obviously to continue the planning, but also the structuring and then the write-up. So what I then suggest is that you go and search for relevant literature within your topic. And sometimes we get people who say, well, there isn't enough, or I can't find anything, or, you know, there is a lot from 2003, but there isn't anything recent. Now you need to ask yourself the question and why this is maybe. On the one hand, I think it's good to look a little bit back and to look at literature that is a little bit older, because it can really help us to understand the development of things. On the other hand, we do want you to focus on more recent literature, okay? So that's something that sometimes we sometimes sort of criticize a little bit when we see that most of the literature, most of the sources that have been used for the essay or the report were rooted in 2000, 2005, yeah? So you do have to have a considerable amount of sources from the sort of the last 3 years, if that makes sense. What these sources are is really down to you. This can be...
I've got a question, please.
Yes?
Okay, so the essay in Econ Strategy is based on the article that's written in 2011.
Yeah.
And I did ask the lecturer, and he said that the entire research, it should be based on material, that's written up to that date. So is that an exceptional case then?
So that 2011 publication, just for me to understand correctly, is
Okay, so
looking back
the
at everything
article,
that's happened.
yes, yeah, it's been published in 2011. So if I'm doing research, I then go, can ignore all the articles that are published after that date?
You mean before?
After.
No, so I would then look at everything that's between 2011 and 2016.
Right, okay.
So you're saying that this person has covered everything between now and 2011?
Yes, the argument is made on the attractiveness of industry, the 2011. So if I look in future, say like 2013, it's obvious that, that industry is, it is attractive. So I guess that our research, it should be based, on all materials published before that date.
Well, if you have a publication, yeah, that's dated with 2011. So is it dated with 2011, or when was it published?
It's dated and it's been published in 2011, in September 2011.
Okay.
And then a claim is made in that article, and we have to assess it and analyze it.
Okay. So in order to do that, you would then have to look into literature between 2011 and 2016. Because obviously, if something is published in 2011, even though that they make a claim that, this is a trend or whatever it is, you then need to justify it. You then need to find evidence that that is the case, right?
Okay. All right. Yep.
Or have I misunderstood you there, correct? Yeah.
No, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, as I said, search for relevant literature. So that was a very good example that if you have something that was published in 2011, for instance, then you really need to ensure that you look at everything after that. Because also keep in mind that publications in 2011 are probably already 2 or 3 years old themselves because of the publication time, yeah? So then obviously you read and you make notes, which you are probably fairly familiar with already. There's different ways of how you can skim read, how you can use markers, how you can use post-its, a couple of things that we talked about in the session when I saw you. Everybody will have their own style in making those notes, and if any one of you would like to have more information on that, obviously I'm very happy to provide that. And then you draft an outline, an essay plan, and this is something I can really recommend that you do. And this is also something that you can bring to your module leader, or you can bring it to me if you want, to have a look at the structure and the flow. This is also where you would put down a number of sources that you have already identified as the key players, yeah? And you can start sort of thinking about evaluating them. Where do they sit within my essay, okay? Do I agree with them? Do I disagree with them? And that can really help you to shape the structure, yeah? And once you've got an outline and you get feedback, obviously, to revise this outline, because that will be something that that you will really have to follow through in order to have the sort of the logical flow of your essay. Okay? Any questions so far? Anything you would like to ask? Okay. So the second stage now, as I said, is the structuring stage. So let's assume you have done your draft and you have written your essay plan and you have had some feedback on it, or you're happy with it in general and you think that there is a good logical flow to it, and you use that as your sort of skeleton to work through. Then the very common thing that you're probably very familiar with is that we normally structure it in 3 big parts: the introduction, the main body, and the conclusion. Now, some module leaders will explicitly say you don't need an introduction. just go into the main body, or you don't need a conclusion. Okay, so that's down to them, and that's specifications obviously that you need to identify and ask about. But normally you could assume that that's what's required with an essay and a report. Sometimes with reports they will also ask for abstracts. So in addition to your assessment criteria, it's good if module leaders can provide you a structure for a report, for instance, so that you know what they expect. Do they expect an executive summary? Do they expect an abstract? Do they allow an appendix? And so on. Okay? So with the introduction, normally you divide it into two big areas. One is the sort of general orientation, and the other one is the focused orientation. Okay? So you start out with giving a bit of background, explaining maybe why this topic is relevant and relevant now. Yeah? So sort of general statement about things. So even though you might use common sense to do that, you still need to reference it. You still need to make sure that you justify that general statement. Okay? As I said earlier, it doesn't matter if this is an academic or a non-academic resource. Yeah. So the non-academic resource would be anything from a company report to newspaper articles, also well-known and trusted blogs, for instance, and so on. And then the next part is that you then outline your aim. So in the focus orientation, you really talk about what's the aim, what's the purpose of your essay, what are you trying to achieve, okay? So that's really in the beginning. And then you can, but you don't have to, and it depends on how many words you have to write. If it's 1500, you probably try to be more precise. You then can also say how this paper or how this assignment is structured, really. Yeah. So what's following next? Are you going to discuss the different themes that you have identified? Are you going to present all the sort of the criticism first, and then have a sort of discussion on it? What's your approach? Okay. So that's something again that's down to everybody else, how you find it the most useful to do that. Okay, so some people, for instance, like to start by outlining all the literature first, and without having a debate necessarily, and the debate happens in a second part. Other people like to more sort of bridge that, so they make a statement, okay, and then they start evaluating it. We come to that in a minute. So similar how you can do your main body in this example here, and then you have your sort of your conclusion on that, and then you go to the next one, to the next argument, for instance, that you want to make. Yeah, but it depends really on what you prefer. So once you've done your introduction, you then go to your main body, and as I just mentioned, it's about building up an argument, and the important part here is it's about building up that critical argument. Yeah. So can I just ask, have you had a session with the library on critical thinking or critical argumentation?
No, we haven't.
No, you haven't. Okay. Has this been touched on by the module leaders in any shape or form?
Don't believe so.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Can I just ask, do you feel comfortable with critical argumentation, or is it something that I should sort of try to explain a bit more?
I'm not comfortable with.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
It would help, yeah.
Yeah, it would help. Okay.
It will help.
So basically, the whole idea of critical thinking is that you start with presenting your knowledge, okay? So you start to talk about what is the problem there actually. So let's say you have identified a theme or something, or a particular trend, yeah, that came out of that paper, and you want to dig deeper into that, and you then also use resources from 2013, 14, 15, 16, whatever, yeah? So you first of all present that problem or the question, yeah, that you want to solve, that you want to talk about. And then you present different types of evidence, yeah, to start your argument around it. And this is when we then talk about negative and positive evaluation. Okay? So this is where you will then use a number of citations, for instance. So a citation is when you use content, yeah, or a statement from a publication, but you write it in your own words, and then you reference it by using the author's name, comma, the year of publication. Okay, so a short reference within. So that would be a citation. And then you can continue going about, let's say, quoting another publication. So if you would use a direct quote, so to speak, yeah, you then would have to, so you don't put it into your own words, but you just, you can say copy and paste it, but you don't just copy and paste it. You acknowledge it where it's coming from. You acknowledge the source by putting in the author, the year of publication, and then the page number where it was found in that specific publication, okay? Because otherwise it would be understood as plagiarism, yeah? So you might have then got two points or two papers, or you found two papers who claim something, okay, that you don't necessarily agree with, okay? And then you maybe found two other papers that making the opposite point, which you agree with, for instance, and you put them in there as well. So you're really trying to play it off almost, okay? So that's when you start to really be critical about what has been said there in the first place, and really try to build up this argument by using a lot of different types of evidence to make your point, okay? And then in the end, you can make your own conclusion. Now this could be that based on what you have just sort of built up and discussed, that you have got your own argument, yeah? Or it could be that you agree actually with some of what the authors say, but you might agree with a thing that one author says and one thing the other author says, and you put it into your own argument. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Christine, one thing
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether everybody would like to understand, but I would like to understand what's the right way to put the references.
Okay. So I mentioned already the sort of short referencing and the long referencing, yeah? So the short referencing is within the text. So if you read a paper and there is some information in that paper that you think, oh, that's very interesting, I would like to use that in my essay, and you rewrite it in your own words, yeah, then you reference it by using the so-called short reference, which is the author, so it's in brackets, the author, comma, the year of publication. Okay? That's one way. Then obviously, this author, with the year of publication and everything else, as in the title of the paper, the journal it was from, either when it was accessed or when it was published, and the page numbers, this sort of long reference needs to then go into the section of references in your essay. Okay? So I need to be able to link those two up.
Okay, Christine,
Mm-hmm.
For one of the assignments, I'm using a annual report that was filed with the SEC.
Yeah.
And it's got, in various places in my report, I'm putting information from various places of the annual report. So I was planning on putting page numbers in the short references so that you can see which information came from which part of the report that I'm referencing. Is that actually allowed, or should I just effectively say it's just from the whole document?
Yeah, so if you quote directly, yeah, as in if you take it one-to-one, then you need to use the page number. Or if it's a very long paragraph, but I wouldn't suggest that. Yeah. So if you quote directly, then you need to put in the page number. I would stay clear of just using one source.
Oh no, I've got multiple sources. I'm also taking multiple points of data throughout the source, so I'm putting page numbers in the in the short reference as well, so you know what came from where. Because I'm directly referencing financial information from various different pages.
Okay, with financial information, it's probably a bit tricky because that's always directly quoted almost, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So then you're probably right, that would be good to have the page number there, because otherwise it might be difficult to find it in the document if somebody would look at it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm very happy to come back to the referencing. I just want to make sure we go through each of that, and then I'm very happy to take some more questions, and I can see one on the left here as well. I will come back to that. So when you have built up your argument, and you can do that with, and as many themes as you want, basically, all the way through, depending on what you want to do, really. But that's how the way it is. Then you come to your conclusion, where you summarize what you have covered, and you basically highlight the main findings. So the main points that you have made. So let's assume you have argued 3 different points, yeah, all the way through, and in the end you always made your own point. So these are then the 3 points that you would then take into the conclusion and highlight, and you then also reflect on limitations or things that came to mind that weren't maybe explored, or that would go too far, or be outside the scope of the essay, but were still interesting to look at maybe. And then you can also give recommendations. So this can be something, if, I don't know, with financial data or things, if you're supposed to come up with some ideas of how to change it, improve it, I don't know, make things more efficient, then obviously you can also put in some recommendations there based on the analysis that you have done. Okay? So obviously you structure that at this point. So we haven't even started writing yet. Because the more detailed you can get from the plan to before you start the actual write-up, the easier the write-up for you. But it's good to put this in very clearly and to be more and more specific, and then it happens automatically how you're going to do the write-up, because you've got all the information already there, and it's just about making sure you use the right words, and that's what we talk about now. So the third step is then obviously, as I said, just the write-up. So we know we have used a number of different sources. We have used academic sources, non-academic sources, and so on. And you already have also written up your reference list, because while you're structuring it, yeah, you can then, while you're doing this part here, where you think about how I'm going to put this together, how I'm going to make sure there is this flow and make it more specific, you will have already put in short and long references, so you should have your reference list at that point finished. The next point is that you then think about, okay, how can I balance, yeah, my argument? How can I make sure that I'm really critical, that I'm really evaluating what I want to say? And this is done by anticipating possible objections to the reasons of evidence you've given, okay? And to show the reader how you have considered them by using counter arguments, for instance, like I said earlier. And the best way that this is done is by using a certain type of language. And I think somebody said, okay, how should we write in postgraduate level, actually, in terms of the language, what's required? So I will give you some ideas here and some suggestions. Obviously, I've also put some links on SariLearn in the community space area. I think it's called an academic phrase bank. So that's from the University of Manchester, actually. But it's a really good resource, or data bank, if you want, to find different phrases to express some of the things that you want to say. So language-wise, and there is something called reporting verbs. So specific verbs that we use in academic writing that express certain things. Okay, I'll come back to them in a minute. And then also there is certain ways of how we express negative and positive evaluation. Again, I'll come back to that in a minute. But also how we express caution. Okay, so using modal verbs, adjectives and adverbs, for instance. Now I'll come back to that in more detail in a minute. And then once you have all considered this and you have done your right job and you have used the right verbs that you think fit what you want to say, then there's this post-writing stage. Okay, putting your essay aside for a bit and actually revisiting what you have done, your text at a different time, rereading it, restructuring it, and re-editing it. And the important element here is to really have this focus on clarity. And this is one of the things that a lot of people drop due to time, and because after a while you really get bored with the topic, which I totally understand. But unfortunately, it's one of the really important elements that can make an essay really great. I also know that when you write things, and let's say you have 1,500 words or 2,000 words to write, and you have a little bit too much and you have to edit it down. Now that's one thing. But sometimes we really struggle to delete things. Just do it. Be ruthless. Yeah, sometimes that's better. Sometimes less is more, to be honest. Okay, so going deep into the sort of language bit. So doubtful verbs. Doubtful verbs are verbs like XYZ is claimed or XYZ assumes. So these are verbs. If you use those, the reader expects that you criticize this author or the point that is made at some point. Okay, so if you agree with something, you wouldn't use the word XYZ claims because you create an expectation in the reader. With neutral verbs, so these are verbs where the reader expects you to discuss this further, to find counter arguments. So quite often this is expressed by using things like XYZ suggested, XYZ reported, those sort of things. And then there's so-called certain verbs, so verbs that you agree with. Okay, so the reader expects you here to give confirmation, yeah, to agree with what you have just sort of cited, for instance. So this is when you say XYZ points out that, so or states this and this and this. The reader then anticipates that you actually agree with what this person has said. Yeah. So that's one thing when we talk about critical thinking, how this is expressed. And then the last one is about the negative evaluation and the positive evaluation. And I've just given here a number of examples of how this is expressed. So for instance, neither X nor Y can be used as something to express negative evaluation. Or it is unclear how author X arrived at a conclusion because of. Or little attention or little evidence is given. Or it remains unclear. Or it is doubtful, for instance. Okay. Or sometimes we start reading something and we think, oh, this is really good, and then you go to the end and you go, it's not really. So you can also say that. You can say that first impression, this, that the findings of this study were really promising. However, looking into it deeper, it was clear that there were a number of areas not well explored or explained or identified. And then the positive evaluation, we normally use words like it directly relates to, or it's suitable for this and this, or the author makes a strong case for, or that's a clear argument. And quite often we say author X emphasized this and this and this. And if you talk about different variables or different phenomena or different themes, then you can say this plays a crucial role, a really important role, or and so on and so forth. Yeah. So the words that you're using are quite important actually, in terms of how you get your critical argument across to the reader. Okay. Any questions at this point before I go back to Victor's question? No questions? Okay. So Victor posted and said, going back to the 2011 article question. So the lecturer replied that the industry analysis should be about the attractiveness of the industry in the year the article was published. Oh, in the year the article was published. Yet you can also analyze how the attractiveness has changed over time if you think that there have been important changes. Okay, I get you now. So this contradicts what I've said about doing research from this to this. Okay. Yeah, I can elaborate on that. Of course, so in this case, it is very clear what the lecturer actually wants. I couldn't hear that clearly, so I apologize for that. So yes, you should go back and see what happened before that. You're absolutely right. But also, I think what is interesting here is when it says you need to think about other important changes. I guess what is meant here is to look at any sort of political, environmental, economic, social events that might have influenced that. But I wouldn't, I would probably in the conclusion maybe also hint to, how this is now, maybe, or say something that, this is sort of an historical analysis and knowing how it has developed in the last 5 years. I know I would make a point of that as well. I wouldn't just leave it in the 2011 stage, if that makes sense.
It does, yes. Yeah, sorry. It disconnected for a minute or so, yeah.
That's okay. Have you?
Yeah, so most of the research is based on articles, at that time, so 2011, but I probably don't use, many articles, that are a couple of years old, as they are not relevant, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that case, the argument that you made about 20 minutes ago about using the articles that are quite recent, it doesn't stand anymore, right?
For this particular assignment, no.
Okay.
I don't know. I would have, to be honest, I would have probably questioned why we're focusing on 2011 and why, why the last 5 years are not part of the assignment almost.
I think it's because then it wasn't obvious and now it is. So it's kind of, so if I don't know the future, then what's the, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So,
okay.
But, if an instruction is as clear as this, then definitely. But, in other cases, you might have a more sort of broad assignment question that would allow you to look at the last 3 or 4 years, yeah, and then I would try to be more recent. But if it's specifically explained like this, then absolutely what I've said earlier is in this context not relevant.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to ask, or that maybe is not clear yet, or you would like me to repeat? Okay. So, I mean, that's basically it, and that's basically what it is about. As I said, I'm very happy to have a look at drafts or outlines and just give you some pointers, but also obviously use your module leaders because they are experts in the field, and they will really know what they are expecting. So if I look at it, I can look at the structure and see is there logical flow for me. I can look at that, but from a content point of view, you will have to go back to your module leader really.
Okay, I've got another question, please.
Yeah.
It's probably a silly question, but in terms of giving a title to the essay, is there like any rules around that? Or, I just got to be creative and just come up, with something. How does that work?
Well, it's probably down to you. I mean, you can just put the instruction of the assignment on the very top. Or you can find a title. In this case, something that some of these sort of maybe variables that you identified as attractive to the industry that you could put in there.
Okay, sure. And the other one, in terms of research, is there like a healthy recommendation in terms of what percentage, of our research it should be based on published articles, then say like online resources and books? Is there any kind of guideline for that?
It's always a bit difficult to say. However, I mean, ideally you have a very good balance of it, yeah. But the majority, we say normally, should be reliable resources. Okay, so online resources is a question of what sort of online resources, yeah. So there are so Wikipedia, for instance, yeah, is not necessarily a resource that we would suggest to put in there.
Okay, and if something, say, is cited by like 300 people and something is cited by 8 people, what's the minimum, that I should look at? Say, if the article is cited by, say, like a single person, is that a good article?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question. But normally we say that obviously if it's published in a well-known journal article, yeah, and it has a lot of citations, that obviously there is a lot of popularity with it, and that has more weight and is therefore maybe a bit more credible. So yes, I would say that can be a criteria, but not exclusively, because if a publication is, I don't know, 5 years old and has 300 citations, then yes, of course, that makes sense. If a publication has been published 6 months ago and only has 20 publications, is it less in quality then? So I think that's also a judgment that you have to make along the way. But sometimes you find something and you read the title and you think, oh, this is really good. I'll read that, and it has been cited by a lot of people. And then you read it, and it has little relevance to you. Then there's no point in it. And there might be other ones where you read it and you think, oh, well, it was just a conference proceeding a while ago, so it wasn't really cited by a lot of people or at all. But it was still relevant of what they said and what they found, and it maybe comes from a credible institution, then I would still use it.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah?
Yep.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Can I ask a general question, please?
Yeah, sure.
All right. In terms of referencing,
Yeah.
I think there's sometimes of different types of references, like direct quotations or paraphrasing or things like that. Do we have a certain percentage so we don't have to go beyond that, like 10%?
Okay, so obviously the idea at this level is that you can demonstrate how you have built up your own argument, okay? And while you can reference, as in cite, other people to help you build up this argument, yeah, you then also need to make an attempt to build your own argument based on that, yeah. So there is no percentage to say, how many references do you use and those sort of things. But obviously the argument that you are making should be yours in there, and it should be underpinned by evidence. So quite often, you might have, like I said, you have a section, for instance, if we go back to the slide beforehand, this one there, if you've got a section where you start sort of debating a problem, with positives and negatives, and then you come to your own conclusion, and then you go to the next one again, you start debating, and then you come to your own conclusion, then obviously there will be a lot of referencing going on there, but you will have your little comments in between as well, and your little interpretations in between as well, and the point that you're making based on those in the end. So it's them, again, probably quite balanced out. Does that help you?
Yeah, it helps.
Okay. So I think that's the most important thing, how you build that up, and then how you do your own interpretation and come to your own point. So there's one thing about just listing references and never commenting on them. That's something that where we would probably say, well, it's a little bit too descriptive at that moment in time, because there doesn't seem to be this sort of interpretation going on and little evaluation. Yeah. So that's an important aspect. So you can say X said this and X claimed da 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 da, whereas author Y stated this and this and this. This is an interesting, this is an interesting contrast, and then you make your point, what the contrast is. Then you find another piece of evidence that takes you on to the next point that you want to make, for instance. Yeah. Does that help you?
Yeah, it helps very much.
Okay, good. And anything else?
In terms of the formatting of the essays,
Yeah.
we are told that font size is 10 and its Arial font and spacing is 1.5.
Okay.
Now, what about headings and subheadings? Is
So
there
headings,
a standard for that?
well, headings and subheadings, normally if it's 10, then headings are normally in bold. I don't know if you number them or not. That's down to the lecturer. All the formatting is normally down to the lecturer and given by the lecturer. Every lecturer does that differently. But I would do headings probably in bold, and I would do subheadings in italics, but not bold.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But
Sorry,
keep everything in the
Victor,
same font size.
I don't think. Hi, sorry, just one thing on that. Are you talking about the strategy essay for 10-point Arial?
I think so, and OB as well.
Yeah, because
I
that
think they're
doesn't
both
say
10, aren't they?
1.5. Yeah, it doesn't say 1.5 line spacing on that.
Oh, it doesn't. Yes, of course it doesn't.
It's just that, it's bad enough
Yeah.
to do 2 pages
Oh,
without
Christ.
adding any extra space.
Okay, thank you. Oh, dear.
Okay, so that's clear. There's another question here about what are the rules on appendices, as there's a lot of contradiction about this. Okay, can I ask what are the contradictions, or what has been said so far to you about appendices?
So I wrote that question, so I'm happy to say what the contradictions are. So I think on Saturday morning I understood we were not allowed to do appendices. Then by Sunday we were. I think Amar's been to a meeting, and I think what the point was is you can do them, but you can't just shove it in. You can't just shove like another 1,000 words in an appendix just to make sure that because you ran out of words. And I think the issue, I know that one of the people on Sunday that had done their strategy one said that it's quite hard to do if you can't put tables and things in an appendix, because it's not a word count limit, it's a page count limit.
A page count limit?
Yeah, so it's not like 2,000 words and then you'd stick all your diagrams in the main text.
Okay.
It's 2 sides of A4.
2 pages of A4.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Per question. So it just means that it's very, very tight because you're working to a page count limit.
Yeah. Okay. And is it necessary to put in tables, you think?
I think. Well, I feel a bit unsure myself, but I know that other people have put tables and appendices.
Okay. I mean, the university regulation is word count, so I'm not sure about the page limit, to be honest, because a page only holds a certain amount of words. So I mean, I don't want to say something and then the lecturer says no, I really don't want any appendices. I think it's down to the lecturer to say no appendix or an appendix. But normally with the university regulation there is a word count, and tables or words in tables are included in the word count. So I think the question is, what is it that you want to put in the appendix? I understand the point to say that, well, we don't want to have, additional information in the appendix. The appendix, the point of the appendix is that you put something in there that you might refer to that has some relevance, okay, but not direct relevance.
Yeah. So I guess the financials and things like that would be the things that you'd stick in an appendix.
Yeah.
But Christine, I'm just a bit interested in your point about this university rule, because our essay was issued with one date, and then they said that, and then they realised that was a mistake. So then they said, oh well, no, it's the university rules, don't you know, to have it on this date. And so I feel like if the rules word count, then that's really simple, because it's much easier to deal with than a page count.
I would agree with you, but obviously, I can only investigate. So who is teaching your strategy?
I can't remember.
There's a couple of lecturers. There's Louis and there's Juan.
Okay.
But I think the page count thing is very definite, because we've already had to clarify the number of pages because they weren't consistent throughout the request.
Okay, I mean, Louis.
So I don't think that's sort of up for debate.
Okay, so who of them is? I'll just write it down and I'll ask Marco tomorrow if he can shed some light on this. Because I
think it's Louis that's issued the essay, isn't it?
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
And the essay is also 2 pages?
So it's two-page. It's a question in 2 parts, which is two-page responses, if that makes sense.
So 4 pages in total.
And I think that's the one that probably puts the pressure about the appendices, because it's this page limit. So if you wanted to stick in a graph, that would take up half your page limit.
Yeah, because otherwise you can't read it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So and then Juan, is that the same? Yeah, same module.
I don't think he's issued the essay though. So and then all the other ones are word counts, aren't they? They're 2,000, aren't they?
Yeah, the other 2 are 2,000 word counts.
Okay. I mean, Louis is not a permanent member of staff, to be honest. So he might have just not known about it. But I will run it past Marco and just double check. On the other hand, if that's his requirement, that he says 2 pages, no appendix, or if you do want an appendix, then it's down to you. That's what I want. Then I think that would be helpful, because I think the 2-page thing, I think, we've checked, but the issue is that if it's no appendix, that will have an effect on people. If it's appendix with all the rules about you can't just plonk half your essay in an appendix, I think everyone understands that. Okay. Has anyone tried to ask that maybe?
Well, we have been asking. Emma, what did they say at the staff at the meeting on Monday?
Right. So on this matter, effectively, what it is that anything in the body of the text in the defined constraints is accessible. Anything that sits outside of that cannot be directly assessed. So, for example, we have references, but they can't mark us on effectively what's in the reference, but they can mark us on if the body is relevant to the reference, etc. So, so it kind of goes back to this whole, we could dump a whole load of stuff in an appendix where it should sit in the body of text, and effectively try and get assessed on it. So the way that Marco was thinking was that, well, yeah, have appendices, but just know that whatever goes in there, you could put in a lot of effort and it may not necessarily return very much.
Okay, I will get back to him on this. With the marking the references, only not marking the references and only marking the body. and that appendices, if so, wouldn't be assessed. I mean, I understand, or I could assume why he said that, or why that's the case, because obviously somebody could have a really good appendix, and if it's and it's, let's say, 20 pages long, and the other one doesn't have one, and so the one with the 20-page long appendix gets suddenly an 80 because he has demonstrated and had more supportive evidence than the other one.
I think the sentence he said that was quite telling was that the appendix may not even be looked at, but if there's something in your body that maybe you want to put some more information to support it, and if the marker isn't certain about what you're saying, they might be able to flick there, have a look at what's being at kind of your supporting evidence. So it might be a table of financials. So if you've said in the body, although they report higher profits, their liabilities go up or whatever, you can actually have that table in the back that actually shows that you've gathered that evidence.
Yeah.
But they may not actually even necessarily need to go and look at it if they feel that it's communicated properly in the body.
Okay, well, I will ask him on that and see if these questions can be clarified, and maybe put on Sarulan from the module leader so that you can all sing from the same hymn sheet. Okay, any other questions in regards to either this specific essay or in general or unrelated?
All right. Just to confirm that last point, the 2,000 count limit or word count limit is for the main body text. Is not the referencing or the appendix. Am I right?
So again, I don't know what has been agreed with this specific lecturer. Normally, the essay, if an essay is 2,000 words, or let's say it's 2 pages, everything within that limit, is assessed and marked, and that includes references. From my point of view, and if the 2 pages are the main body as the lecturer sees it, then everything in there will be marked, and everything outside the 2 pages is not marked. So that's the same with 2,000 words. But I don't know if the 2 pages include a reference list.
My understanding is it doesn't. Is that your understanding, Emma?
Sorry, I got briefly distracted. Can you repeat the question?
It was, so if it's the 2 pages, that excludes reference list, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Because otherwise your references could be 3 or 4 pages long at the back.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. That's important to know. So what it says is the main body is the actual the written documentation, and then you have your references in the end. So he wants 2 pages written, and the rest is referencing. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense now more. Okay. Okay, so if you want, as I said, I will ask about the appendices, if that's wanted or not, because that's either a yes or a no. And if it is wanted, what is acceptable? Is that good?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Christine, I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
One is, with regards to this deck that you've got, this slide deck, could you kindly share that with us?
Yes,
So I think it's quite nice.
I'll put that on Sarulan. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's quite nice to just refer to that, just to affirm what you're doing. The other thing is, I'm not quite sure that we've had a great deal of either discussion or guidance, or maybe I missed it, I don't know. But with regards to what I considered some of the key kind of places for sourcing articles and journals. So I know I've looked through Surrey Learn, and I can see there's actually quite a bit that you can access through there, and there's various portals that you can access through there. But are there some that the university usually considers that these are the key ones that you could guide us to, or that at least it confirms that, yeah, we're looking in the right place?
Okay, so with sourcing articles and finding publications, I mean the library is obviously the best source because they have got access to most of the things, and if you log in with institutional credentials, then you normally can access the majority of journals even from outside the university. I think in terms of databases, I mean we work with the main ones and the big journals basically. So I would probably look through the library and see what's offered there, and that's normally absolutely fine. But also equally, it sounds really simple, but Google Scholar is a good source. And if you can look there for publication year, which helps, and then you can go into the website of the publisher, for instance, and look around there more. Science Direct is also a good database. Some articles are very good in there. Some journal articles are absolutely excellent and 4-star and 3-star, and others are debatable. So yeah, it's tricky, but I think that the best way is really to look at the library and to put it into the library and then see what the library comes up with, what it suggests, and if that's not sufficient, then to go outside maybe.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks for that.
Did you have your library session?
We did right on the first weekend,
Yeah.
And it was useful, but this is just I guess maybe it's just for me just to kind of confirm what I'm looking at. Am I looking in the right places, and what have you? So yes, thank you.
That's okay, and I guess it's also that was right in the beginning, which is great, but on the other hand, now it becomes relevant. So in the beginning there was a lot of information to digest.
Absolutely, that's exactly right.
Okay, and anything else? Anyone else who would like to know anything about referencing or plagiarism, or do you know how to submit? Was that explained to you?
It was during the library session. However, none of the assignments have actually been enabled for upload just yet on Surrey Learn.
Okay. Okay, so I'll feed that back to Mark as well to check that the assignment folders are available. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and you can, when you submit your essay, you can have it checked through the Turnitin system. Are you aware of that?
What does that do?
So I write it down here so you can see it. It's called Turnitin. And basically what it does, it shows you the similarity index of your writing, yeah? So it gives you an indication of what you've written, how similar it is to the resources that you have used. And that's sometimes a good help to understand or to look through those that are flagged up that are similar, to check them and double check them that they're not plagiarized, that you have referenced them correctly. So for instance, when you submit and and something, it's coming up as, let's say, 50%, yeah, and you think, oh, what, 50% similarity index? So 50% doesn't say that it's plagiarized. 50% only says that there is a 50% chance of similar content to content elsewhere in the web, yeah. So then you can look through some of those, and you can just ensure that you have either used your own words, for instance, or that you have referenced it correctly. So that's all it's for. There is no measure in terms of, well, 40% is high and 20% is low, because you could have 40% similarity index, but you have referenced correctly and everything is absolutely fine. But that's just how it comes up. And you could have 20% and have copy and pasted and not referenced correctly. So yeah, it's just an indication to look through those through that similar content and to ensure that you have referenced correctly. Okay, there was another question here. Yes, so that's what I was just talking about. Yes, I did. There's a bit of a delay. So she was just talking about the similarity in tricks. So it's, in this case, saying 50% on our work. The lower the better. But we have people who have more than that, and it's fine, absolutely fine. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to know or ask about?
A general question I have.
Yeah.
Generally regarding writing the assignments, because I've done my first degree in a different country where we haven't to use this kind of way to submit our assignments. My question is, do we have like sorry general guidance how to write essays from A to Z? Because I was looking at different sources in the internet, but I would like to know if we have something preferred.
So I mean, everything I've presented today is really the sort of, I think, the guidance that we can provide at that level. There are so-called splash courses where you can attend them. They're workshops, but they run over the whole semester, which might not be relevant to you, and they're normally within throughout the day, Monday or Friday. So I don't know how useful they can be then. So they're really mainly aiming at international students and to help them structure sentences, learn how to build up these sort of arguments and those sort of things. Is that what you sort of meant?
Yes, of course, and you are right, because I'm not able to come Monday to Friday, so if you can have something like to study online or download it from the website or something, could be helpful for me as well.
Mm-hmm. So did you join us a bit later when I was talking about the sort of the structure of it and the writing?
Yes, I think I joined like 10-15 minutes late.
Okay. So at that point, I shouldn't have come to the 2 stages as well. So you might have just come in when we were talking about it. I mean, I've recorded this presentation and it will be available to you on Sarulan as well.
Okay.
So I'm very happy for you to go through it again. But I'm also happy to have a look at an essay plan or an outline that would be useful for you, or a section of your essays, to just give you an idea of how balanced the argument is, or how critical it is.
All right.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we can do. But I think other than that, it's also about practice.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for that. I think that's a good question for maybe some others as well. And anything else from the other participants? Well, if you have any questions in the next sort of weeks, just ping me an email, and I'm very happy to answer them. If I feel that they are relevant for all of you, then I will just stick them on Surrey Learn, if that's okay, so that you have all got access to the answers. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're
Thanks,
very
Chris.
welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
have a lovely evening, and good luck with the writing, and really, make use of your module leader and myself, and I will pin those questions to Marco, and I will send you an email with the answers as well. Okay? Oh, he will. One of them.
Thank you.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you very much.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.